The kingdoms of Egypt. People first lived along the Nile River as early as 5000 BCE. Over time, villages grew up beside the Nile. These villages eventually turned into cities. Before 3100 BCE, Egypt was divided into two kingdoms, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Upper Egypt was in the south of the country, while Lower Egypt was in the north. The name for the kingdoms comes from their location, on the Nile River. Upper Egypt is up the river, or where the Nile comes from. So the Nile River comes from here, actually further down in Africa, but this is Upper Egypt because this is where the Nile comes from. Lower Egypt is down the river, or in the direction of the flow of the river. So here's Lower Egypt here, because the river is flowing this way, so down the river. Rivers always flow from the mountains into the ocean. In 3100 BCE, a strong king from Upper Egypt named Menes united the two kingdoms and made the city of Memphis his capital. Here's Memphis. When Menes united the two kingdoms, he combined the two crowns, and the rulers started to be called the rulers of the two kingdoms. Here you can see the crown of Upper Egypt, the crown of Lower Egypt, and then together the united crown of United Egypt. Menes combined the two crowns, and the rulers became known as the rulers of the two kingdoms. Egyptian civilization begins in 3100 BCE, or before the Common Era. Because the history of Egypt lasted for such a long time, it is divided into different periods so that historians can easily identify or find what time frame objects, events, and people come from. These periods are divided into dynasties. A dynasty is when the same family ruled over a long period of time. Here are your vocabulary words. Eventually, period. Test your knowledge. Number 1. Explain why the two kingdoms were called Upper and Lower Egypt. Number 2. Why do you think that the king would call himself the ruler of two kingdoms instead of one? Who was the king that united the two kingdoms? What is a period of time? What is a dynasty? Use the two vocabulary words in sentences that show you understand them. Do not just copy the examples.